This is the fourth and final vision of Daniel, and the events leading up to it are spread over the last 3 chapters of the book of Daniel. Daniel started off in the beginning of chapter 10 spending 21 days in prayer and fasting. We're not specifically told what Daniel was in fervent prayer for, but we can speculate. 4 years have transpired since Cyrus made his decree for the people of Israel to return to their lands. But according to the book of Ezra, less than 50,000 of the millions of Jews alive had bothered to return to Judea. The Jews had become comfortable in exile. Most preferred to stay in pagan lands, out of the land of promise. Daniel was gravely concerned by this fact, and it's very likely this is why he prayed and fasted for 3 weeks. He was seeking answers and direction from God. What was to become of Israel if they would not return? We saw in our last study it had taken the angel 3 weeks to fight through demonic opposition to reach Daniel. We saw that a real supernatural battle is taking place in the spiritual realm. Things we don't see directly, yet we see the impacts of these battles in our earthly realm. Some might ask, isn't God all-powerful? If he's omnipotent, why doesn't he just terminate the demonic opposition? One day he'll do just that, but right now, even the demons are serving a purpose. As they oppose God, we learn patience. We learn the need for persistence in prayer, the need to stand strong against evil. The darker the world, the greater the need for light, and the greater our opportunity to shine the light of Jesus. We can learn many lessons in the struggle, preparing us for eternity. The more we struggle and persevere against the darkness, the greater our rewards. An elite athlete doesn't just run onto the field on game day without having spent many tough years in training. So it is with us now. This is our time of testing and training. We're toiling now for the King, preparing for eternity. There are 135 specific prophecies given to Daniel by the angel in this 11th chapter. We looked at the first 4 verses in our last study. In verses 5 through 20, the vision focuses on the 2 divisions of Greece that constantly fought over the promised land. The land of Israel sat between their centers of power. The kings of the north, in salmon on screen, are the Seleucid dynasty, roughly Syria. This is a fragment of the Grecian Empire. The kings of the south, in green on screen, are the Ptolemaic dynasty, roughly Egypt, another division of the Grecian Empire. The Seleucid and Ptolemaic dynasties fought for about 150 years. Whichever was in ascendancy held the land of promise as a buffer territory. Imagine 2 children fighting over a teddy bear, ripping and tearing the arms, legs, and head of the bear. Israel was the metaphorical teddy bear, and the Seleucid and Ptolemaic dynasties, the childlike kingdoms who fought over it. To give a short summary of Daniel 11, we have 5 significant kings amongst numerous other rulers, all with names starting with A. In verse 2, we're introduced to Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes, the 4th Persian ruler, called far richer than them all. Verse 3 talks of a mighty Grecian king, Alexander the Great. Verse 10 predicts Antiochus III or Antiochus the Great. Verse 21 predicts the coming of a vile person, Antiochus IV or Antiochus Epiphanes. In verse 36, we see the willful king, who is the Antichrist. 5 significant rulers, Ahasuerus, Alexander, Antiochus the Great, Antiochus Epiphanes, and Antichrist, all with names starting with A. Verses 5 to 20 gives precise predictions that disturbs the Bible critic. How did Daniel know the history before it happened? Unless you know your history well, this section of Scripture is difficult to follow. And truth be told, it's a little dry. We'll march right through the next 15 verses efficiently, covering ground as quickly as possible. Verse 5. Also, the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. The king of the south speaks of Ptolemy I of Egypt, who took control of the land of the Jews. The Seleucid and Ptolemaic dynasties fought for about 150 years. Whichever was in ascendancy held the land of Israel as a buffer territory. Verse 6. And at the end of some years they shall join forces, for the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand. But she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. After well over 100 years of battling, the south and the north, essentially Greek dynasties, attempted a truce via means of marriage. Ptolemy II of Egypt gave his daughter Bernice to Antiochus II, but upon the death of Ptolemy II, the alliance and marriage quickly ended. Verse 7, but from a branch of her root one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. Ptolemy III, a southern king, the brother of slain Berenice, and a branch of her roots, avenged the murder of his sister. He invaded and prevailed over the new northern king, Seleucus II. Verse 8, and he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt, and their princes, and their precious articles of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Ptolemy III fulfilled these prophecies to the letter, even outliving Seleucus II by 4 years. Verse 9, also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. However, his son shall stir up strife and assemble a great multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. His sons refers to the sons of Seleucus II. Seleucus III, who was succeeded by his brother, and Antiochus III. Antiochus III ultimately wrestled control of the Holy Lands from the south. Verse 11, the king of the south shall be moved with rage and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. The continued precise and accurate nature of these prophecies is shocking for the atheist. Antiochus III and his large army was defeated by Ptolemy IV, and the promised land returned to the dominion of the south. Verse 12, when he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. The angel tells that the arm wrestle for the Holy Land would continue. Verse 13, for the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come to the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Antiochus III from the northern dynasty after some years assembled a great army and invaded Egypt. Verse 14, now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fail. Many Jews rose up and resisted the rule of Ptolemy IV, resenting their Egyptian overlords. So the king of the north shall come and build a siege mount and take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand them. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. The northern Seleucid king would ultimately prevail, and history records his victory of Antiochus III against Egypt, gaining control over Ptolemy V and retaking the glorious land. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. This continual warring between the Grecian Seleucid rulers of the north, or Syria, and the Grecian Ptolemaic rulers of the south, or Egypt, ultimately weakened the overall Grecian powers. In effect, they fought each other whilst Rome rose in power, and their perpetual infighting would ultimately lead to their demise. The glorious land is a reference to the land of Israel. Verse 17, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him, thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy it, but she shall not stand with him or be for him. He shall set his face. This is Antiochus III, the Grecian king of Syria of the Seleucid dynasty. The daughter of women to destroy it was Cleopatra, ancestor to the 100 years later very famous Cleopatra of history. But this plan did not play out as Antiochus had hoped, and he failed to gain full control of Egypt. Cleopatra did not ultimately go along with the father's plans. She loved her husband and did not stand with her father once she was married. Verse 18, after this he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall take many, but a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end. With the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. Once Antiochus III's plans to control Egypt had failed, he turned his attention towards the conquest of Asia Minor and Greece. He teamed up with the famed general from Carthage, Hannibal, but they were defeated by the Romans, who were very much on the ascendancy by 190 BC. Then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and not be found. Antiochus III had failed in Egypt, he failed in Greece, he failed in Asia Minor, and his treasuries were badly depleted. So he returned to his own lands and pillaged a Babylonian temple, resulting in an enraged local citizenry rising up and killing Antiochus III. Verse 20, there shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. After the death of Antiochus III, his eldest son, Seleucus IV, attempted to tax the land of Israel, but he was assassinated, possibly even by his own brother Antiochus IV, before he could implement his plans. Verse 21, and in his place shall arise a vile person, to whom they will not give the honour of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably and seize the kingdom by intrigue. This vile person is Antiochus IV, also known as Antiochus Epiphanes, a name that means anti-support, God manifest, self-titled, I might add. Though his enemies called him not Epiphanes, but Epimanes, which means the maniac or the madman. Apart from the possible murder of his brother, Antiochus came to power by intrigue, peaceably. He used smooth promises. He flattered the leaders of Pergamus and Syria. He sent ambassadors to Rome to court favour. We know from Daniel 7 and 8 that Antiochus Epiphanes was like the Antichrist, who will rise to power as a lying peacemaker. We need leaders today, both in our churches and community, who are people of their word, people of dignity, people of honour, people of truth. But sadly, many congregations prefer men who tickle itching ears, men who are all front and no substance, sprouting fad topic sermons laced with pop psychology. They stain the once godly pulpits of the world's churches. The same goes in our secular society. Our secular society will choose a fast-talking, good-looking politician over a reliable, honest person any day. Our society prefers flashy and new, even if these things often come with little substance. And we'll pick up in our next study where we left off today, having been introduced to Antiochus. Next study will delve deeper into this evil man's life. See you in our next study. God bless.